Hi everyone and welcome back. In this video, I will demonstrate how to administer the Core Phonological Segmentation Test. However, I will be giving you an overview of the assessment. The Core Phonological Segmentation Test is an individually administered assessment designed for students in kindergarten through grade 1. It can be used for screening, progress monitoring, and diagnostic purposes, and it takes approximately 5 to 10 minutes to administer. This assessment measures three foundational phonological awareness skills. They are sentence segmentation, syllable segmentation, and phoneme segmentation. The purpose of the assessment is to determine whether a student's reading or spelling difficulties are related to weaknesses in phonological awareness. Research has consistently shown that phonological awareness is one of the strongest predictors of students' ability to learn to read. By assessing a student's ability to segment sentences, syllables, and phonemes, teachers can identify specific skills deficit and provide targeted instruction before reading difficulties become more significant. The materials that are needed to administer this assessment are 8 small colored blocks or cubes. You will also need the teacher record form, as well as a quiet area with minimal distractions. The colored blocks are used as a visual representations to help students demonstrate how spoken language can be broken into meaningful parts. Let's look at what the instrument for the assessment looks like. This is your teacher record form, and it has part A, part C. First, we will put our student's name, the grade, and the date that assessment is administered. Of course, you have your explicit directions that will guide you in administering this assessment, and you're encouraged to read and follow the directions on your teacher record form. The first section measures a sentence segmentation, that's part A. This will show you the student or demonstrate the student's ability to identify the individual words within a spoken sentence. Now you will begin by arranging 8 colored blocks in row. Again, we are less 8 blocks here. We have only 6 blocks, but they will do. So you arrange your 8 colored blocks in a row, then ask the student, what is something you like to eat? If the student responds, for example, pizza, say, I am going to use the blocks to show the words in the sentence. John likes pizza. As you say each word, move 1 block for each word in the sentence. This is a still picture, therefore I will be pointing on the blocks to pretend moving them. Starting from left to right, starting from our red block, we will say point on red for John, orange likes, and the yellow block would represent pizza. Then point to each block from left and ask, what word does this block represent? Starting from left, which is our red block, you'll ask your student, point on it and say what word this block represents. Your student should say John, right? And you continue this one, you point on your orange block, your student should say likes. And then you point on your yellow block, your student should say pizza. So what word does this block represent? John, and this one, likes, and this one, pizza. If the student demonstrates understanding, return the blocks to the row and ask the student to complete the task independently using the same sentence. If the student does not respond correctly to any of the first three test items, discontinue Part A according to the testing protocol. Again, let's take a look at Part A. So Part A, number 1, use blocks to show words in sentence. Number 1, you will say, father called, and your student should use the blocks to represent each word. Starting from left, red would be father and orange would be called. So your student will pull forward the red block, then pull forward the orange block to represent the words in that sentence. And you will make your note of exactly what the student did. If the student pull each block to represent each word, you'll make your jotting and you will put a plus or minus if your student got it minus if they got it incorrect, or a plus if they got it correct. And you again make note of exactly how the student represents each word. Make sense? Part B is our syllable segmentation. You'll also read the instruction and follow suit. So all right, so we're at Part B. Arrange the blocks in row and say, so you'll arrange your blocks in row and say, now we are going to break words into parts. I am going to use the blocks to show the word cupcake. Move one block as you say cup, then move a second block as you say cake. So your student, starting from left to right, should move the red block for cup, then move the orange block for cake. Ask which block is cup. Your student should point on red. Then which block is cake? Your student should point on orange. If the student needs additional support, clap each syllable while saying the word. Provide extra practice with familiar words such as Superman, doorbell, and butterfly. Remember, breaking a word into syllables during instruction is not considered an error. If the student does not correctly answer any of the first 5 test items in Part B, discontinue this section before moving on. If the student gets the items 6 through 10 incorrect, you will discontinue Part B of the assessment. Now we're moving on to Part C. The final section measures phoneme segmentation, which is the student's ability to separate a spoken word into its individual sounds. Arrange the blocks in a row. Say, we are going to use the blocks to show the sounds in a word. Let's look at the word time. The word time has 3 sounds. T, I, m. As you slowly pronounce each sound, move one block for each phoneme. So you have red for T, orange, I, and yellow, time. Then ask, can you say the 3 sounds in time? Your student should be able to produce the sounds. If necessary, ask which block stands for T, or what sound does the middle block represent? If the student says the letter names instead of the sounds, remind them that you want the sounds the letters make, not the names of the letters. Then you'll return all the blocks to a row. Again, this is a still picture, and it's the reason why it could not move, right? But then your student will return the blocks, or you will return the blocks in a row. And you can practice with another sound. For example, if you wanted to show the word shop, how many sounds does it have? Use the blocks to show me. If the student is unable to complete the task independently, model the word by saying sh or p. Then move one block for each sound. Again, we always start from left to right. Red for sh, orange for o, and yellow for p. If the student uses 4 blocks, remind them to focus on the sounds they hear rather than the number of letters in the word. So once the student demonstrates understanding, proceed to the assessment items. If the student does not correctly answer any of the first 5 test items in part C, discontinue the assessment according to the testing protocol. That's how you'll administer the Core Phonological Segmentation Test. Now let's talk about the scoring. After administering all 3 parts, count the number of correct responses for each section and report the student's score. So you'll write exactly what the student said. If the student said demonstrated exactly father called, it's correct. All right, they got 1 out of 5 correct so far. If they got what time is, if they got that correct, the student would get 2 items correct. What if the others are incorrect? That student only got 2 items out of the 5 items correct, and you'll write exactly what the student said right here. So whether it's correct or incorrect, you will make your note of exactly what the student response was. For part B, you do the exact same thing and you write the total score. Same for part C. All right. Now we're going to talk about how do we interpret the scores to know exactly where our student is at. This will take us to our table, which shows us exactly how to interpret these numbers and to score our students. Now, when you add up, say you assess this student in spring, and the student is a grade 1 student. To be at the benchmark level, the student is expected for part A, the student is expected to get at least 5 items, not at least the maximum of 5 items correct. Okay. If the student gets 0 to 4 items correct, that student is at the intensive level and needs intervention. For part B, the student is expected to get 8 items correct to be at the benchmark level. And if it's 0 to 6, then that student is at the intensive level. And for part C, to be at the benchmark where you want that student to be, at least 9 items correct, or 6 to 8 items if they're at the strategic level, and for the intensive level, 0 to 5 items correct. When you put your numbers or you are finished scoring your student, that is how you will interpret your scores to understand where your student is at. Make sense? Now, what do we do after we have interpreted our data? Students performing in the strategic or intensive range will benefit from explicit instruction and repeated practice in the specific phonological awareness skills identified during assessment. So, if the student was in the strategic or intensive for part A, that's what you will focus on with your intervention. If they are strategic or intensive in part B, this is the area you will focus on. If they are strategic or intensive in all 3 parts of the assessment, you will have to focus on intervention for all 3 parts of the assessment. Your effective instructional routines will include phonological medley, and these are just some examples, right? You have to use evidence-based activities to strengthen students' awareness of spoken language and building the foundational skills needed for decoding, spelling, and reading success. In closing, guys, the Core Phonological Segmentation Test is a comprehensive assessment that evaluates 3 essential phonological awareness skills: sentence segmentation, syllable segmentation, and phoneme segmentation. By administering each section consistently, following the testing protocols, and using the performance benchmarks to guide instructional decisions, educators can identify early reading risk and provide targeted interventions that support student success. Thank you for watching this demonstration of the Core Phonological Segmentation Test. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.